And many of you have heard of this already, but now let's dive in. If you think you are beaten, you are. If you think you dare not, you don't. If you like to win, but you think you can't, it is almost certain you won't. If you think you'll lose, you're lost. For out of the world we find success begins with a fellow's will. It's all in the state of mind. If you think you are outclassed, you are. If you think you've got to think high to rise, you've got to be sure of yourself before you can ever win a prize. Life's battle doesn't always go to the stronger or the faster man. But sooner or later, the man who wins is the man who thinks he can. Hey, folks, I'm not alone today as I've read that poem from chapter 2 of Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. I'm joined by Galen Bingham, the leadership strategist. I was going to say Galen Williams. Galen Bingham, the leadership strategist. Galen, if you think you can, you probably can.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I tell you, that's the start of everything. And I love the way Napoleon Hill puts it. He says that any thought which are mi any thoughts that are which that are that are mixed with any feelings or emotions constitute a magnetic force which attracts from the vibration of the ether other similar related thoughts. Have you ever been in a situation where you thought of something, then all of a sudden more of that started coming? That's exactly what this principle is about. So if you think you can, you're going to start getting all kinds of evidence, all kinds of suggestions that reinforce that belief. And the opposite is also true. So I can't wait to get into this conversation. We've had Gary before. I can't wait to hear what he's got for us this time.
But it's so interesting though, Galen, because so many of us, again, inundated with what's going on in society on a regular basis, our minds automatically go to negative. Our minds automatically go to what if I can't? What would happen if I don't? What if I miss? What if I fail? What if I don't do good on that test? What if I don't do good in this interview? What if I, on and on and on and on about what if I don't do well? I wonder how we can shift that narrative to be able to think differently and begin adopting this faith that Napoleon Hill. It sounds simple. Is it too simple there, Galen?
I think we make things complicated. I think we
Mhm.
make things complicated. I have said actually this past week with a couple clients that typically the smarter we are and the more degrees we have, the more reasons we can think of as to why we can't do things. Whereas kids don't know. Kids don't know what they can't do. They just go do it. This is what I want, so I'm going to go do it. And I think at times, if we could be more like children, we probably get more accomplished.
Yeah, I think I was that kid who jumped off the top of the staircase to think that, you know what, I just watched Superman. He could do that. I can do that too.
Yeah,
Until
you didn't know that that was dangerous yet, right?
I was that little guy for sure. Good stuff there, Galen. Galen, we have a special guest, another special guest joining us today. He is no stranger to the show by any means. Let me introduce him a little bit if I could. Gary Glass started his career as a sewer cleaner. However, after applying the principles researched and shared by Napoleon Hill, he made a committed decision to pursue higher education. He earned multiple degrees, secured a position with a major aerospace company, enjoyed a high salary, and even excellent benefits. However, within 8 years, Gary began a remarkable 30-year career with NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Wow. He contributed to three spacecraft launch teams and delivered hardware that now travels throughout our solar system today. Gary shares the knowledge and strategies that have enabled him to achieve his greatest success. Gary, good morning to you, sir. How are you doing, my friend? And welcome back.
Oh, thanks, Peter. It's a blessing to be back. It's just how can you lose with the principles, and how can you lose from the ideas in the poem you just read? They're just right there. It's the man who he thinks he can. I know that that's so well applied in my own life and in a number of arenas, and it just continues on and on and on. It's just so much fun.
And thanks so much for leading off with that, Gary. And but I gotta pose a question to you right off the top. What happens to human beings that we think we can't? What gets in the way as we get older, as we mature? Is it just life itself? Is it the problems? Is it the challenges from your perspective? What gets in the way that from preventing us from thinking that we can?
Boy, it's unfortunately, I think it's the crab bucket of our friends and family, if you know what I mean. If you've ever seen a bucket of crabs, if you have a bucket and you put one crab in a bucket, that one crab will climb up out of the bucket, hop over the side, jump back into the ocean, and be free. However, when you put a bunch of crabs in a bucket, that one crab, he'll get up to nearly the top of the bucket and he's ready to just make that jump and go over the bucket to the other side and go to freedom. And what happens? One of his buddies grabs him by the leg and pulls him back down. and I fear that it's the same with us. It's just the same with us. And I feel like, Galen was mentioning with the kids earlier,
Mhm, mhm.
Galen and you, how a kid doesn't know that they can't, and a kid is the single crab in the bucket that's able to get up over the lip and get back out into the ocean and be free. Whereas when you get a little bit older, the friends, the family, the institutions, the naysayers, no, you can't, no, you can't, come back here. And they're not attempting to harm you in any way. It's one of those six ghosts of fear that they're projecting onto you, that you just, when you really want to go.
But I also think it's to the detriment. Our family cares for us. They love us. They want the best for us. They want us to be safe. And
Absolutely.
in our listen, I've been guilty of this. Absolutely. I want my kids to be safe as they grow up. So take the assured route. Go to college, get a good job, stay there for as long as you can.
Right.
And that's not always the best approach for them to step out on a limb to a certain extent. And I love the quote that's behind you that I'm reading. I keep going back to whatever the mind of a man can conceive and believe it can achieve. But sometimes we get in our own way or others' way. Galen, I'm gonna pull you into this conversation because I could sit here and dive on in and conceive of the things that I've done wrong too. What about you, my friend? As you reflect on what gets in the way.
Yeah, I think it keeps going back to not having a strong desire, right? If you have a strong desire and you just know that you know that you know, maybe you can't even articulate it because the part of the brain that controls that knowing is not the same part of the brain that controls language. So I can know some things and not be able to explain it. But we've got to, I think we've got to be locked into just believing that this thing that we want is going to be given to us. So Gary, I want to ask you, what are some things that you do to get locked into something that you just believe? Jokingly, my family, my family says, I just believe it deep down in my shanana that this thing is going to happen. Although there might not be outside evidence yet, how do you get locked into what you believe and your faith?
Oh boy, that goes straight back to another one of the principles. In fact, it's the very next principle is auto suggestion.
Mm.
And I tell you, auto suggestion is a great tool toward faith. And associated with that, with the Napoleon Hill Institute, we have a club. Monday through Friday from 5:30 to 6:30 a.m. in pretty much every time zone around the world. We have people getting together, and what do? We start in by writing down 10 things that we're grateful for, and then we have a little bit of a meditation, and then we're writing down our goal every day. Monday through Friday, as a team together, we're writing down our goal every single day. And then after we do that, We write down 6 things that we can do that day, that very day, that will lean us into our goal. They don't have to be big things. If life is still there, no matter what's happening, and so these things can be 5-minute, 10-minute things. They can be a phone call. They can be uh, ordering something. It can be absolutely anything. And so I find that that's one of the great tools. And then another one of the great tools is just the act of persistence, saying we're talking about faith today, and in the context of a Webster's dictionary, Webster would say that faith was a complete trust in someone or something. And then when we expand that, we extend that to the definition of faith in the context of Napoleon Hill's success philosophy, that becomes an absolute certainty, just like you were talking about a minute ago, Galen, an absolute certainty, that knowing down into the marrow of your bones that you will achieve your goal, that you've decided, and you have that almost capital T truth in the trusting of yourself, in the trusting of God, the universe, source, that this will be, and that you are willing to pay the price. In this chapter, we've got that beautiful tool of the self-confidence formula, where we tell ourselves, I am willing to pay the price to be able to get whatever it is that I want. My dream life, my dream job, my dream business, my dream relationship, my dream physicality, my health, my fitness, my nutrition, my how I'm giving, how I am leading both myself and anyone else I might be. And we are all leading others by the example that we set, by the standard that we live by, and good faith, having a good faith in yourself. What a standard. And it gets to that very first sentence in the chapter. Faith is the head chemist of the mind. And you even in those words, the head chemist, the leading mixologist, is how I put those two words together. And then later on in the book, Napoleon Hill has that great list in the chapter on organized planning of the 11 attributes of leadership, and being able to have those, and to be able to use that as one of the sets of tools of how am I in my faith? How am I leading myself in these different areas? So just so many tools, Galen, as
I
you know.
love it. I love it. I'll tell you what you've done already, though, is you've started talking about how all the principles do kind of connect together. So, Peter, if you don't mind, I'd like to go ahead and launch and share this video, because I think it does a really good job of demonstrating all the principles, but how they're connected in the way that Gary just described.
Absolutely, my friend. Let's go ahead and make it happen.
Number 1 is desire. Napoleon Hill said that everything starts with a burning desire, a compelling reason for doing what it is we do. Step 2 is faith, having belief in our ability to attain that which we desire. Step 3 is what we call autosuggestion. Autosuggestion simply means being very intentional about the things that we are pouring into our thoughts, into our brains, and into our consciousness. Our brains, our minds will receive everything automatically, but we have to work extra hard to make sure that the positive things are what we are feeding ourselves, because those positive thoughts are going to turn into positive actions. Step number 4 is specialized knowledge. No one person knows everything, even about whatever their particular area of expertise might be. And the value of the Mastermind principle is using the specialized knowledge of other people. Step number 5 is imagination, the workshop of the mind. Everything starts with our imagination and our thoughts. the burning desire to transform those thoughts into our reality. In order to do that, we have to take a look at step 6, which is organized planning. That is how we crystallize our desire into action, organizing ourselves. Having the thought and not acting on the thought isn't going to get us anywhere. We have the thought, we go through the organized planning to transform that thought into action. Step number 7 is decision. What Napoleon Hill said is the mastery of procrastination. Napoleon Hill said that the antidote to procrastination is simply to make a decision and then move on that decision. Step 8 is persistence. We have to have a sustained effort which is induced by our faith in order to achieve our goals. One of Napoleon Hill's books I love, even the title, 3 Feet from Gold. Those people who became rich during the gold rush in the Wild Wild West days didn't do that because they were necessarily smarter or had better information than anyone else. It's because they stayed just a little bit longer. Sometimes people left when they were just literally 3 feet from gold. So hanging in there, being persistent, is step number 8. Step number 9, the power of the mastermind, the driving force. None of us can accomplish anything on our own. Everybody, I don't care who you are, from the most prominent person to the person who might be considered the lowest on the totem pole, everybody has someone who helped them get to where they are. And the power of the mastermind is being able to use those influences around us, use the thoughts, use the knowledge, use the exploration of other people to help us in achieving our goal. Step number 10, the mystery of sex transmutation. This title can be a little confusing, but essentially what the mystery of sex transmutation means is that we oftentimes in our society think of sex as being purely physical. It is absolutely physical, but what Napoleon Hill teaches us is that sex also has an emotional element, and that sex is the strongest of our desires. That if we can take our sexual energy, transform that into positive, creative influences, it can propel us to new heights. And so we spend quite a bit of time talking about the mystery of step 10, which is sex transmutation. Step number 11 is the subconscious mind, which Napoleon Hill tells us is the connecting leap between our human mind and the infinite intelligence, the source of all thought, the source of all creativity. Conscious mind, we spent some time talking about how we use that through the influence of autosuggestion and what we're feeding into our mind. Step number 12, which is the brain, the broadcasting and receiving station of thought. Final step number 13, the sixth sense, the door to the temple of wisdom. This is the final step through which infinite intelligence may and will communicate voluntarily without any effort from or demands by the individual. The principle is the apex of the philosophy. It can be assimilated, understood, and applied only by first mastering the other 12 principles.
I love that video. Those of you who are watching it have never seen that video, hopefully you were able to get a grasp of the overview of these 13 principles, these 13 chapters in this great text. I want to make sure that I acknowledge everyone in our YouTube world. See Laura Jackson, Carla Hill, Lynn Whitfield. Good morning to you all. Sherry Rudolph, Doretha, Dennis, Diane Kingflowers. Good morning, Miss Smitty. Good to see you all this morning. Thank you so much for joining us as we finish up this faith chapter for the month of February. And let's pivot back over to Mr. Glass here. Gary, I want to bring you back in for those of us who are watching or even listening. I would love for you to remind us who you are and a little bit of your journey, if you could, because I think it's fascinating, the NASA journey for sure, but definitely tell us some other things about you as well. And then how this faith chapter, how this faith thing that we're talking about has impacted your life.
Oh my goodness. Without faith, what can you do?
Yeah.
Both in yourself and outside. You know, it's real interesting. I was the consummate drifter when I was a young man. No clue, didn't know, was drifting from job to job without any real rhyme or reason or purpose, certainly no definiteness of purpose. I ultimately landed as, and always looking for what was the criteria? Well, who's going to pay me the most for my time? And I can remember working as a plumber, as a sewer cleaner for, it was overall about 6 years, and just had this one really impactful event where I made the committed decision, and the event was, I'd gotten called very early in the morning on a Monday morning, go out to a woman's house, probably the most wealthy condominium I've seen in my entire life, in Marina Del Rey, California. This woman's condominium had a 50-foot boat dock, and she had yachts coming up and parking right next to her home so they could go out to the Pacific Ocean, and just absolutely gorgeous. And she'd had a kitchen sink stoppage, and ended up to fix that. What do? You go into the underground garage where all the pipes are up on the ceiling, and you hit a pipe, tink, 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 and with the high frequency there, that pipe's empty, and tink, 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 that pipe's empty, and clunk, 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 that pipe's full of stuff just by hearing the difference in the frequency there. And what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to put the pipe across the front, and open the cap and let everything go. And that morning, I for the life of me, I just couldn't open that cap. I couldn't get enough leverage. And so I do exactly what I'm not supposed to do. I bring my ladder across, put that sucker right in front of my nose, and I pop that cap, and just just a gucky, gooey, smelly mess. Greasy. Oh, it was awful. And you know what? I went from pristine clean to absolutely filthy dirty that quick. And it was the best thing that happened to me, because that quick, I made the committed decision that I was going to become some kind of I was going to go back to school, going to get some sort of technical degree. I was hoping for engineering, and then I was going to go get a high-paying job in an aerospace company in the Southern California area. I was going to get the retirement and the benefits and oh my gosh, paid vacation, what a blessing, and all of the things that you'd want. And it took me about 8 years. I ended up finally quitting, saving some money, quitting the job, going to a couple of different schools, and ended up with a bachelor's in math, a bachelor's in physics, a master's in physics, and started my job with NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and was there for well over 30 years, and on spacecraft teams, and buying hardware for spacecraft, and it was just fabulous. And it's the craziest thing. One of the things associated with faith, and just knowing where you need to be in the right place at the right time. Initially I was not admitted into the engineering school, and so my thought was, well, gee whiz, when I'm a plumber, if I have my clean tools and my sharp tools, and I did my best work. And so if I want to be some sort of an engineer, or some sort of a builder of things, what are the tools of the engineer? So that would, in my mind, that was mathematics. And then what happened in my own journey was, in the math major, you needed to take an upper division class in another study. And so the hardest class I could find was this electrodynamics class in the physics department. And I guess a glutton for punishment, I don't know. Anyway, at the time, I was taking the bus from Burbank to Northridge to go to Cal State Northridge, which is, as the crow flies, it's about 18 miles, and by bus it's about 25. And so to get there, you have to be there very early. And so I can remember, in order to get into I didn't get into the electrodynamics class straight away, and I was going every time. And the professor said, well, if you, there aren't any seats now. However, after the first exam, don't worry about it. There's going to be plenty. I don't know if you've experienced that before. And so I was doing my best to do the good work, and the exam day came. And I get on my bus in Burbank, and I get all the way out to Reseda, and I'm supposed to get a transfer there. And so this particular day, it's just dumping rain. It's just pouring rain and pouring rain and pouring rain. And my bus that I'm supposed to pick up to transfer doesn't show up. And then the next bus is so full that it just drives by and puts a, myself and the other students that were there at the street corner, all we got was the wave from the bus driving by. And so then the third bus arrived, and it picked us up and it's got us there. And for an hour 15-minute exam, I was more than half an hour late and just soaked to the bone. And I don't know, I had a little bit of an attitude when I opened the door to go into the classroom, and I was kind of like, give me that exam. And the professor's like, oh my. And I got about 80% of the exam done. And of the 80% I got done, I got about 80% correct. And the professor was like, oh, absolutely, come on in. And that was when I ended up becoming the double major with the physics department, and just knowing I'm not going to take no for an answer on this exam. I'm just not. And I can remember the next meeting, I get the exam back, and I knew I had done well for what I'd done. And I didn't know if it was going to be enough, and it was enough. And I go to my next class, which was a statistics class, and this lovely little young lady that I'd sit next to every class. I come in, and I don't know, you've probably been there. You go into the classroom, and you just kind of plop in the chair, and you're kind of exhausted from the exam. And she's like, well, what's the matter with you? And I say, well, here's this exam I just took. And she says, oh my gosh, you can do this stuff? And I tell her, yes, most of it. And she says, my dad works for JPL. Give me a resume. I'll give it to my dad. I can't promise you a job or anything. However, and although he did not give me the job, it dropped the seed into my mind that I could get a job there. And a year and a half later, I was working there. And that entire time, I built up the faith. This is where I'm going to be. This is where I'm going to be. This is where I'm going to be.
Fascinating. Wow. Interesting. The journey is never a straight line there, Gary. That's even what I just heard from you as well. And those of us who are listening, or even were listening a little bit to that process, you could probably relate, because even mine is so crooked, it's all over the place there, Galen. And Galen, I want to bring you in because as so many of us, we get demoralized by the lack of there being a straight line.
Mhm.
And especially in our careers today, you watch what's happening in the news, even with people in the federal government and everything like that. It can be very intimidating, frustrating when you are thinking it should go one way and it goes totally off the rails. What are your thoughts, Caitlin?
Yeah, I want to bring this back to something you said earlier, Gary, and that is this idea of using auto suggestion. And I love the way that Napoleon Hill puts it. He says that there's nothing to hinder you from deceiving your subconscious mind when giving it instruction through auto suggestions, as you deceive, as he deceived his son into thinking that he was actually going to be able to do some of the things that he did. Talk a little bit about this act of deceiving yourself into thinking that this thing is possible, although you may never have seen it before. You've never seen yourself working at that company before, but you deceived yourself into thinking it was only a matter of time. It was absolutely going to happen. What is that process like of deceiving yourself into thinking that something is possible, although you've never seen it before? You feel it down in your gut.
Yeah, you mentioned that, Galen, and I feel it's so true. And I feel just like in the Napoleon Hill's use of autosuggestion, that constant paced repetition. There's two ways to get something. We were talking earlier about a knowing, and how you just know all the way down into the marrow of your bones that a thing will happen. And for me, well, what is it? There's two ways to really know that thing. And the first way is it's just an impulse. Something happens, and you just have this impulse, and you have this emotional impact, and an awful lot of emotional impacts are a little bit of in a negative sense. For a lot of people, especially those in New York, 9/11 would have been an emotional impact event. For me, my sewage shower, that was an emotional impact. It, However, after the second way of really getting these ideas into your bones and into the marrow of your bones is this constant paced repetition of an idea, which is exactly what autosuggestion is. And what is that? It's just like Napoleon says as the subtitle of that autosuggestion chapter. He calls it the medium for influencing your subconscious mind. And so you ask about the methods used. These days I use I mentioned this self-discipline camp earlier, that the Napoleon Hill Institute has, where we're writing down our goal every single. We wake up at 5:30 in the morning, and we write our goal every single day, and we write down things we can do that day to advance us towards our goal. And so there's again that auto-suggestive, that repetitive belief. When I was in college, I can remember I had on my desk where I had my IBM 286. For those that remember those, I always had I always had my school catalog that would show what was required for me to do the job. And every time I looked at that school catalog, it reminded me, this is what I'm doing. This is why I'm doing it. And that's so important for all of the listeners. Know why. Why do you want your goal? And not just at a surface level, well, I want for this or that, but a deep emotionalized reason. Why do you want it? What is that motivating force within your bones that will allow you to pass through any fire, to pass through anything required in order for you to achieve what you want? Napoleon talks about burning desire, and that in the very first principle of desire. He talks about burning the ships, and how honestly, I think it was Cortez that went from Spain to South America, where there are so many indigenous, and they're just going to wipe us out, and he burns all of the ships and says to his men, "You see those ships? They're gone. Our escape route is gone. If we're going to survive, we have to fight, and we have to win." And that's what they did. And that's what all of us do as we use this principle of autosuggestion, building up that burning desire within us so that we do not take no for an answer, even if we have a temporary defeat, even if we don't think that we're quite going to make it in one little part of our journey. We know that our overall journey will be successful. And it's just such powerful material built into the Napoleon Hill success philosophy. Just
Hey, I love not only the content that you're sharing. I love the energy with which you're sharing it. And so I got a question that I would love for you to lean into, and then I'll turn this back over to Dr. Peter. I noticed that in all of your descriptions, you didn't say, you said you got to know what you want, you got to know why you want it, but you didn't say you got to know how you're going to get it. Very often people get stuck because I have an idea of what I want, but I don't know how I'm going to get it, so I'm going to abandon. Why is it important for you to begin where you are, pursuing the next step without necessarily thinking how I'm going to make this thing happen?
And I love how you ask that, Galen, because the first step is knowing where you are. Recognizing the resources both within you and around you. What do I have to work with to achieve my goal? And then the next thing, what is my goal? What is my goal? and then creating the map, the plan to get there, and then getting into action. Have to have that action. And in the lifespan of Napoleon Hill's work, how I found it so interesting as I keep studying his work and studying his work and studying his work, how the early work is all based in faith. Whenever he talks about faith, he talks about faith as a standalone idea. And later in his lifetime, how he talks about applied faith. Because as we all know, faith without action is dead. It just doesn't make it.
All right, back to you, Peter.
Yeah, what I'm also hearing you say though, Gary, we just got to do something. We just got to get the momentum going. We can't just sit and worry about what ifs, what could go wrong, or even the whole story. We just need to start jumping in, as I like, jump in the water in some form or fashion, so that we can build that momentum, so that we can build that action that you mentioned there. Am I on point there, Gary?
Absolutely. And the interesting thing is that when Napoleon Hill talks about planning, I feel, well, the first plan is the first plan. And then, kind of like my English teacher in high school, she used to say there's no such thing as writing, there's only rewriting. In the context of Napoleon Hill's idea, if you're starting your point A down here and your point B where your goal is up here, you're going to have a plan, and something's not going to work out right. And just like associated with my English teacher, she says there's only rewriting. In the context of Napoleon Hill and the principles, there's only replanning. That first plan, if that first plan really works, you probably didn't have a big enough goal. You probably didn't have a goal that was worthy of you.
That's huge there, Gary. You got to say that again. You got to say that if that first plan works. Say that again, sir.
If that first plan works,
Yeah.
your goal was not worthy of you, because you have so much potential within you that if that first plan worked, the goal was weak. And because the goal is weak, it's not. What is the purpose of a goal, Peter? The purpose of a goal is for you to grow. It's not to get to get the house or to get the car or to get the thing. It's for you to become the person that has the characteristics, that has the mental, the emotional, the physical strength to be able to have that thing, whatever that goal is.
And Gary, as you mentioned that a lot of us aren't, including myself, sometimes we're not thinking big enough.
Mm.
And that might be selling ourselves short. Right. And those in the audience who are listening and watching, I have to challenge you to dive in and ask yourselves, in what areas of my life am I not thinking big? For your accountability partner, your family, your friends, in what areas are their life could they be thinking bigger? And how might you be able to partner with them in order to impress upon them their greatness that awaits them? Right.
Absolutely. And it's interesting. I feel like there are different levels of goals. Napoleon Hill talks about a definiteness of purpose. And when I think of the word purpose, I don't see purpose as a thing that you have, so it's not a havingness kind of a thing. It's not a doingness kind of a thing, although a lot of doing happens associated with purpose. I see purpose as being the beingness. Who am I being? And I see that as probably the highest overarching level of a goal. Then I see the next step down of a big goal, having a vision. And a vision can be a very large doingness or havingness kind of a thing. It might be in the context of, I've done some real estate investing. In the context of a real estate investor, it might be something in 10 years, in 20 years, I want to own 500 positive cash flow rental units, or maybe 1,000. And so that would be a vision of having this real estate little empire. The next step down, I consider it being a goal, which might be something that could be a 1-year goal, a 9-month goal, a 6-month goal, a 3-month goal, a 1-month goal, a 1-week goal. And then the next layer down, I see the next layer down is an intention. What can I do today that will get me to my goal on, say, Friday? My 1-week goal. How do I get that? And then my 1-week goal, how well is that aligned with my 1-month goal, so that I can chunk these down? And just so important to see the different levels, and I over time, having the distinctions of the different levels of the goals have just been so impactful for me. And it's something that boy, God bless his soul, Bob Proctor taught, and through, using the Napoleon Hill work and so many others. And I feel like it's been a little piece trying to get this comprehension of the different levels of goals and how they all interact and interface with each other, just like Galen was talking about earlier, how all of the Napoleon Hill success principles come together and to create the philosophy, to create this overall path, this beautiful path that anyone can choose to walk down.
Wow, good stuff. Good stuff overall. And I'm even going in my head as I think about a question that I ask clients a lot there. And Galen, I'm gonna pull you in on this because I'm sure you do this also. I ask a lot of leaders when I'm coaching them in the corporate environment, who do they need to be? I heard you mention that, Gary, about who they need to be for themselves, for their goals as they move forward. And that's powerful because we often don't think about it from that perspective. We think about it from a business, others' perspective, but it's so important to reflect on who you need to be for your own goals, for your own objectives, as you pull back the layers of each level there. Galen, great stuff, man. Great
Yeah,
stuff.
absolutely. And like you, I'm having this very conversation with a client right now.
Mm.
And what I'm trying to convey to her is that she's got all the ingredients to do the things that she needs to do. What she needs to focus on is, how does she be? How does she just step back and be? We get so busy as humans as wanting to do things that we can tangibly point to, when Napoleon Hill, and sounds like Gary, is suggesting that a higher level is, who do I want to be? Because that causes everything to fall into place.
Yeah.
One of the places that I go to, and I know, Peter, you go there as well, to get locked into and be reminded of who we're wanting to be, is this annual meeting. So I wanted to share this video to kind of overview, because we talk about the annual meeting all the time, but in this video, listen to what people are able to accomplish, what they're able to remember by attending this annual meeting.
This process has changed my relationships, all of them in 360, because it's changed me. It changed who I am. One of the biggest things that we keep calling it a process, we're talking about masterminding, but what this is, sitting with self, looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, if I moved and removed everything that I think I can't do, or whatever the case may be, and I was able to be anything I wanted to be in the world, what would that vision look like?
the value, and because she follows Think and Grow Rich principles, there's a beauty in accountability. There's a lifting and a rising up, because it's raising the standard, not just for ourselves, but for the people around us. And I think that's what attracted me towards wanting to learn about IMA, like what being more curious about, well, what is that? What's the value in that?
Good stuff, Galen, as always. What a great video. Loving uh, the Think and Grow Rich annual accountability meeting. And if those of you who are listening and watching have never attended this annual meeting, or even just been in an environment where you are being challenged and held accountable to your future goals, as Gary has outlined, this is the meeting for you, because it's so important. We'll talk about this in future principles, how we need to surround ourselves with like-minded individuals who are on the same trajectory. And if you don't have that in your life, someone to challenge you, push you, hold you accountable, makes it a little bit more challenging. I just have to say that. I just have to say that. So yeah, dive on in. Galen, we're getting close to that time where we have to start landing this plane, my friend. And so much richness, Gary. This has been phenomenal, and thank you so much. I want to make sure that I open this up a little bit to see if there's any final questions from our audience as Gary's journey, as his experiences, as even his attachment and closeness with the Napoleon Hill Foundation is so phenomenal. And we can hear it, we can see it, we can feel it from what he's describing as well. So Galen, I want to bring you in, and let's start by talking about what are some of your ahas, maybe some things, or maybe even another question for Gary for that matter, and then how we can stay in touch with Galen as we continue to move forward, sir.
Yeah, so for me, the biggest aha is really just the reminder that we already know what we want to do. We already know who we want to be, but sometimes the world will create confusion. And we need to have someone who is like-minded, someone who can reinforce our faith, to remind us of who we are. And that's what the annual meeting is about. That's what this chapter is about. It's about reminding yourself of what you were put here on this planet to do. And so, Gary, I'd love to come back and get your reaction to this idea that typically we know the mission that we were sent here to complete. We might not be able to articulate it, and we might forget, but we need to forever be recentered around what was that purpose for us to be here. What's your reaction to that?
Boy, I love purpose, because it is such a beingness thing, and because it is such a knowingness thing. And sometimes you don't know. And I can remember, boy, it's been a few years ago already. I had the honor and the privilege of meeting Wayne Dyer just before he passed. And that this is almost exactly the question I asked him, Galen. It's like, Dr. Dyer, it's the end of an event. He had a book. He has the big line of people wanting to get his book signed. I'm in that line, and I get my book signed, and I'm just walking off the stage, and I'm like, no, I've got to ask him this question. I turn around, and I face Dr. Dyer, and I ask him, Dr. Dyer, and he was such a gentleman. He hadn't yet started with the next person, and he completely moved his entire body and faced me and gave me 100% of him in this moment. And I asked him, Dr. Dyer, how do I determine my purpose? And Wayne Dyer says, you have to get quiet and just ask yourself.
Mm.
And so, and it, and it, in the moment, I didn't recognize it, but later I recognized it. It's the very, you have to get quiet. And then on page 1 of Think and Grow Rich, the very first question is, what do you want most? What is your purpose? It's the first thing. It's the first question. It's the first thing. And you have to get quiet. You have to kind of block things out and just ask yourself over and over and over again, what do I want? And the answers will come. What I suggest is if you do this as an exercise, and I'd suggest this as an exercise, have a pad of paper and a pencil or a pen next to you, and just get quiet and still your heart, still your mind, still your emotions, and ask yourself, what do I really want? And the answers will come, and it'll just fill your mind with answers and answers and answers. And then break from that meditation and get your pencil or your pen and just write everything down, and write as much as you can remember down. And then go back to a place of stillness, still your heart, and ask yourself again, because you'll get more. You'll get more, and the answers will come. The answers do come. And
Oh,
just like Peter was mentioning earlier, that the knowing what you want is the critical piece, and knowing where you're at is a critical piece. The how in between just doesn't matter, because it's gonna change. I promise you, if your goal is big enough for you, if it's worthy enough of you, the plan will change.
mm.
Because you'll run into people, you'll have other opportunities, and the beautiful thing about opportunity is, the beautiful sparkly thing may be coming by, but if it doesn't serve you, if you don't know what you want, and you embrace something that doesn't really serve, you're wasting your time. Even if it's this beautiful sparkly thing, let it go. It's something for somebody else. When you know what you want, you can see the thing that will serve you. Makes decision making so easy. Again, more ideas. Another principle
I love
straight
it.
out of my
Incredibly,
Bible, number two.
incredibly tangible, incredibly tangible. Dr. Peter, back to you, man. What about you? What did you get from this?
Yeah, I got consumed a little bit in beginning to do that exercise for myself right away there, Galen. So that was powerful. Thank you so much for that, Gary. I want to make sure that I acknowledge all of our individuals in the chat. Louise Jimenez, Louise, good morning to you, sir. We miss you here on the show. Monique Strong, good morning to you as well. A lot of great feedback that's coming in there, Gary. Thank you so much as you are diving in. Listen, I have to say, my aha moment was what Gary just mentioned there, that meditation, that quiet whispering to ourselves, asking ourselves, what do we want? What do we need as we continue to move forward, and getting clarity around that. And then, as Gary has mentioned, also jump in the water, begin building that momentum, because just saying or knowing or writing down is just the first step. Now you have to be entrenched in those small actions and behaviors that help to build momentum. So, folks, my name is Dr. Peter A. James. I am the high performance coach, helping you to shift your mindset. You can find me on LinkedIn primarily, but also on Shift Your Mindset. I have something very powerful going on these days, and it is called the Own Your Career Challenge. If you or someone that you know, and more than likely you or someone that you know, are going through a career shift, and you need that partnership, that accountability that we're talking about here in today's show, this Own Your Career Challenge is for you. 4 days, actually just like 4 hours of partnership to begin building those great actions and those behaviors. We'll make sure that we put the link in the chat for you. Shift Your Mindset slash Own Your Career Challenge. This has been a phenomenal show. Galen, did you also tell us how we can get in touch with you?
Absolutely, absolutely. So the best way to get a hold of me is to go to your favorite podcast platform and type in whiskey, jazz, and leadership, where I have conversations with leaders all over the world about the whiskeys they drink, the music they listen to, and what they believe it really takes to be an effective leader. As I like to always challenge you, I double dog dare you to try us at least once, guarantee you that you will pick up something that will help you get to the next level.
Good stuff, my friend. Make sure you put your link in the chat as well so that we can share with it. Gary, want to pass the baton back to you, my friend. Uh, Thank you so much for the gems that you've been blessing with us this morning. But give us some parting words, but also let us know what you're working on and how we can stay connected to Gary Glass as we move forward.
Oh, thank you so much, Peter. You know what? Both you and Galen have mentioned it. It is such a blessing to be able to talk and to share. And I feel that this time together that we've had is such a mastermind where we're able to share the principles and to grow each of us. I know I've gotten so much out of the interface with yourself and Galen. It's just a blessing. I'm with the Napoleon Hill Institute, and this coming week we're having a free series of talks. It's titled Think and Grow Rich with Peace of Mind, and it's going to be Monday, February 24 through Thursday, February 27, and it's going to be an hour a day beginning at 12 noon Eastern. That's 9 a.m. Pacific time. It'll be about an hour a day, and if you can't make it at exactly that time, it's okay. We're going to be recording it in Facebook and in Zoom, and the recordings will be there for about a week after the event. Cleona O'Hara, the CEO of the Napoleon Hill Institute, will speak. Dr. Joe Vitale from The Secret and other many books. And geez, Joe's published more than 100 books these days. And David Meltzer will be there as well. How many of you remember the movie Jerry Maguire? You remember how Jerry Maguire ended up making this new sports management business that was all based on the heart? David Meltzer was the CEO of that sports management business back in the day. And he was trained by Bob Proctor one-on-one for multiple years. And the man has gold. Come listen. It's absolutely free, and there's some free goodies, goal cards, and things to help you write out your definite major purpose. And come on out; it'll be worth your time. So, and thanks so much, Peter, and thank you for inviting me, and thank you for allowing me to share ideas with you and Galen. It's just such a blessing to talk to you guys.
Gary, we want you back as many times as possible. Your journey, your insights, and your connection to the Napoleon Hill Institute are invaluable for sure. Thank you so much for being here today. Hey, folks, one thing I would be remiss if I did not return to was the annual accountability meeting. We talked about it. We talked about the importance of having support, accountability, and motivation to move forward. We put in the chat on YouTube, we put the link for you to be able to sign up for it on January 2nd and 3rd, I believe they are, of 2026. Please, it's never too early to begin planning that far out. Ensure that you are preparing yourself in so many different areas of your life. Hey, folks, this has been another phenomenal show, another great opportunity to dive into Think and Grow Rich and really identify in yourself what's next. How to have that faith that you need to get to your next level. Please stay with us and come back next week, because while we've touched on the importance of faith, the auto-suggestion chapter will begin on some of these actions and behaviors to strengthen your faith. So folks, another Saturday morning of Think and Grow Rich Live. Thank you so much for joining us. Please have a safe weekend ahead of you. In the meantime, continue to think and grow rich. Take care.